He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is the Alex Marlow Show.
Welcome to the Alex Marlow Show. I'm Alex Marlow. I hope you all had a great weekend and are ready for the big week. Breaking the Law is here. My new expose, my deep dive investigative book into the lawfare against President Trump, his supporters, people like you, and the ongoing efforts to derail his agenda using the legal superstructure the left has concocted. It's well-funded. And all of that gets broken down. I'm going to give you some of my biggest points and takeaways on the show, starting with the big point. There can't be a bigger point that the lawfare against Donald Trump was coordinated inside the Joe Biden White House to rig the 2024 election. More on that in just a second. But the first thing I do want to bring up to you is tell you how I started my day, and it was with Crockett Coffee. You guys know the good coffee, kind of easy to find, but great tasting coffee. Hard to discover, and when I was introduced to Crockett, I knew it was special. It comes from my friends Clay Travis and Buck Sexton, who are terrific broadcasters, and they had this idea to create a coffee company where it's roasted in our nation's heartland, supports anti-communist, pro-American values. Even a cut of the proceeds is donated to the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. All of this shows that Crockett Coffee is run by some wonderful people, but they also have great taste. Dark roast, mild roast, light roast, decaf. They got a mushroom organic blend. They got K-Cups if you like that sort of thing. I'm a dark roast guy, and it is really terrific. I was hitting that this morning, and I will tell you, it is perfect by a campfire. It is perfect while you're working on a Excel spreadsheet. I think those of you know that I don't tend to endorse consumables that I would not feed myself and my family, and I feel very, very strongly about Crockett Coffee. CrockettCoffee.com, CROCKETT coffee.com, as in Davy Crockett, CrockettCoffee.com. Use Alex at checkout, get 20% off your first order, as the promo code is Alex for Crockett Coffee. All right, so Breaking the Law, it will be out within hours, and I think sometimes Amazon, it shows up early. It is one of those things where you've got this is something where you put your heart and soul into something like this, and then it's here, and it's hard to know where to begin because it is a book, and you need to read the whole thing if you want to get all of the various nuances and points and details and big picture points that I want to share. But I do want to try my best to get the grassroots behind this thing, because I think I make some points that if we do not internalize them and get them out into the culture, into the bloodstream, into the narrative right away, we are going to allow some of the greatest scandals of modern political history to continue, to fester, to manifest. And I want to start with where I'm beginning, which is the Joe Biden's role and the Biden administration's role in the attempted rigging of the 2024 election. And we have a major piece at Breitbart News that is adapted from various sections of the book, where I reveal the Biden White House orchestrated the lawfare against President Trump, specifically with an effort to rig the 2024 election. This is as big of a point as it gets. It was a simple and devious plan. If they could not stop Trump at the ballot box, they would stop him in the courtroom. And Biden gave it all away. He had this candid moment. You guys probably remember this, October 2024. He said, we got to lock him up. Now, Trump said that stuff before too, but he was out of power. He didn't have any power to lock up Hillary Clinton. He was saying it purely as campaign rhetoric. And then now we are at this point where the country's legal infrastructure was being built up specifically to try to get ready for the election to get Donald Trump. And it was a widely held belief within Joe Biden's inner circle that Trump would be in prison before Election Day 2024. And it was probably a big reason why Biden hung on as long as he did to try to make it across the finish line, even though he was pushing 140 years old. But had the Democrats succeeded here and stopped Trump's election, this would easily be the biggest scandal in modern political history. The only reason I add that caveat is because Trump was able to win. Some of the excessive nature of the lawfare, I think, helped with that. But the full scope of the White House's efforts to subvert our democracy, to orchestrate the jailing of their main political opponent, it is beyond what I'm able to capture as a independent investigative journalist, as a citizen journalist. So this is where we need to compel the Congress. We need to compel the U.S. Office of Special Counsel to ramp up investigations, get subpoenas going, get Congress involved, and we got to start immediately. We got to start now. We should have already started, because if there's no accountability here for these crimes that I think I've identified in this book, then they are guaranteed to continue. The left will run back the same playbook with better funding. They will have learned lessons. They'll have better infrastructure. And it's already happening. They're already building up and getting ready to use the same tactics to try to get whoever's next and to try to rig the next election with whatever hoax they have coming forward. So in the book, I start with a history of lawfare, and I go through some of the judicial activism in the past that liberals have used. I cite examples of liberal presidents and liberal judges trying to do what they can in order to try to use the law to be able to achieve their political goals, which is the nature of lawfare itself. Lawfare is not just about trying to beat Trump specifically. It is just the utilization of the legal system to try to achieve a political purpose, try to change the culture, try to take out a target. And this is something that is really innate to the left in their DNA. They've been using it for a long time, and I cite historic examples. In modern times, the father of modern lawfare, I pin specifically on Joe Biden himself, starting with the borking of Bork, which I wrote about extensively in Breaking Biden. How Biden basically cowed to political pressure and took a very qualified judge, Judge Robert Bork, and kept him from being on the Supreme Court for nakedly political grounds. The first time this has ever happened. And a few years later, he tried to run back that same playbook against Clarence Thomas in the high-tech lynching that he tried to carry out with Ted Kennedy, and luckily that one failed. But it shows you that this is how they're wired. They're wired to try to use the legal system as best they can in order to try to take out their political opponents. So that's the foundation of this, and it was steadily ramping up and building until we found ourselves in the Trump era, where they tried to use legal means. It was deeply accelerated by Barack Obama. I go through a few examples of that, using the law, the DOJ and other legal structures to go after Christian groups, to go after conservative groups, and to try to skirt the law on their own, to try to bend and manipulate the law in order to achieve political gains. And then we find ourselves in the Trump era. And the left immediately starts trying to use legal means to take out Trump, from impeachments, et cetera. The Russia collusion hoax, which had a heavy lawfare element to it, of course, which I go through that as well. And leading up to his post-presidency was starting with the J6 overcharging, the construction of the kangaroo court after January the 6th in order to try to figure out some sort of legal means to prevent Trump from ever becoming the president again by declaring falsely that he was leading some sort of an insurrection, to the 6 major cases against Donald Trump, which is really the sort of centerpiece of the book. That's the main course. Probably takes up a little bit more than half the book, maybe. So there's a lot of other stuff as well. But that is the centerpiece, is going through the 6 major cases, 4 criminal, 2 civil, against Trump's administration, where I lay out the threat, what was carried out, what the design was, and I go through each one. And in each case, all 6 of the cases, there were circumstances that tied the Joe Biden White House directly to the case. So I'll give you a sample of what's out there. There's even more detail at Breitbart News today, and then there's way more detail in the book itself. But let's take these cases case by case. The first one, the Stormy Daniels hush money case. First of all, case was not about hush money. It's not illegal to pay someone to be quiet about something, and it doesn't even necessarily admit you were guilty of something. This I establish in the book, where I cite examples of Trump using a catch and kill strategy where you could pay someone to keep something secret that clearly never happened, clearly false things, but maybe you're wealthy enough and you're busy enough that you don't want some sort of attention whore in the media to try to buy themselves some fame, get themselves some notoriety, get themselves time in the news cycle, simply by announcing something that's false, is making a claim like that. So you can pay someone hush money. It doesn't mean you did anything. It just means that you're rich and savvy in a lot of cases. But this case wasn't even about hush money. It was about falsifying business records, which ostensibly the Stormy Daniels case, where he had paid her to stay quiet about certain things, that this was allegedly some sort of a campaign violation because of some sort of paperwork, clerical error. And all of this is trumped up. It's all fault in the case. One of the weakest cases overall, and I enumerate all the ways it's weak, and I'll go through this later on a different show. But the point that I want to note here, the most important point, is that all of this has deep ties to the Biden White House. Let me take you through the political nature of this specific case. First of all, headed by Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, who ran a campaign bankrolled by George Soros himself with the explicit intention of going after Trump. That's how he got elected. He said he's going to go after Trump. He would go around and say that he sued Trump 100 times during and before the election. So while he was running specifically, I'm going to target Trump. That's what he ran on, and he tried to make good on that as soon as he got elected. But his whole campaign premise was that I'll be the guy to take out Trump. Even the New York Times noted that that was breaking lawyerly protocol because he was fetishizing and fantasizing about taking out Trump. Next, presiding over the trial, Juan Merchan, small dollar Biden donor, which is, again, illegal. You're not supposed to donate to political candidates. But his daughter, Lauren Merchan, was one of the biggest Democrat fundraisers. So she has a thing called Authentic Campaigns, work with Pencil Neck Adam Schiff and others. And this is a fundraiser on the order of tens, maybe even north of $100 million in terms of her ability to gather up funds for Democrats. So this is the thing, is you've got people who are leading up this case who have a vested interest in seeing Trump go down. So Trump described this to me as the greatest conflict of interest of all time. And I don't really have a reason to doubt him. But here's the big one. Here is the big point that I think is really important, and the one where the investigations must begin. The clearest example of how the Biden administration was actively involved in this case was Bragg's lead prosecutor was a guy named Matthew Colangelo. He had left his job as principal deputy attorney general in Biden's DOJ. That was the third ranking official, Department of Justice, out of more than 100,000 people. And Colangelo left that job, a job that could lead you to a cabinet post. It's a job that could lead you to a Supreme Court justice position. Instead, he went down to serve as a prosecutor for Alvin Bragg in Manhattan. That type of job is a job that you might get straight out of college if you could not get a better job. And he took this level of demotion straight from the top of the Biden DOJ down to take out Donald Trump. Will Scharf, who's the White House staff secretary now, he described this as the rough equivalent of like a 4-star general in the Army, quitting his job and enlisting in the National Guard as a private. So Colangelo goes down, and he is the ringer that comes in and seals the victory for the anti-Trump forces in this case. This was the one criminal conviction, it was 34 in total, that Trump got, despite it being a very weak case, which I can go through at a different show. But note that they recruited, the Bragg team, a guy from the very top of the Biden's literal Department of Justice to come down and seal the deal in this case. And we just all acted like this was no big deal for some reason. We didn't have Breitbart, of course, but clearly it's a big deal, and clearly this is a massive, massive problem and something that must be deeply investigated. Next case, the Fani Willis RICO case against Trump, where she tried to imply that Trump was engaging in some sort of criminal conspiracy to try to take out, to try to rig the election, have an insurrection. And there is an absurdity to this case as well. Fani Willis, who is a district attorney in Georgia, would try to take out a presidential candidate is, of course, the sort of thing you would not expect she was doing without deep coordination with the highest echelons of Democratic politics. But right at the exact time that Joe Biden was suggesting that we have to demonstrate that Trump cannot take power, this is a direct quote, we just have to demonstrate that he will not take power. If he does run, make sure he, under legitimate efforts of our Constitution, does not become the next president again. Right around this time, Nathan Wade, Fani Willis's boyfriend, was going to the White House for multiple 8-hour meetings. Now, what was Wade discussing? We don't know exactly what Wade was discussing. We don't have that information. I can't get that information on my own as an independent researcher. But I'll tell you, we need to investigate it because Nathan Wade was a nobody. Nathan Wade was a family attorney. Nathan Wade was someone who did divorces and prenups. That was his job. And he got recruited by Fani Willis on a RICO case. He admitted he had to bone up, study up on RICO. Why did he get recruited? He got recruited because he was Fani Willis's boo. He was Fani Willis's boyfriend. That was why. We also learned throughout the scope of the case that Willis and Wade were taking all of these fancy vacations together, no doubt subsidized by taxpayer dollars. But Wade, this nobody family lawyer, put on this major case to take out Trump, and all of a sudden he finds himself taking meetings at the White House, and we don't know exactly what was discussed in those meetings, but we need to. We need to know. Because there's absolutely no reason for a guy like Wade to be going to the White House, which he did on 2 separate occasions, for at least 8 hours. As far as we could tell, that's what he billed the Georgia DA for. Also, Fani Willis had a 5-hour meeting at the White House with Vice President Harris. So this occurred months after Wade's meeting, but before Trump was indicted a few months later. We were told at Breitbart News when some of this stuff was getting broken a year or two ago that there's a guy named Jeff DeSantis, who's a former Biden staff in the White House, who had also been kicked down to the Fulton County's deputy district attorney office, where he became a deputy district attorney. And we were told that he was the liaison between the White House and Willis's office. I don't know, but he's the first person in this case that I would start questioning. But obviously this is a suggestion of deep coordination. All right, so that's the Willis case and the Alvin Bragg case with Stormy Daniels. The next 2 cases are first, the Jack Smith case. Now, this is one of my favorite parts of the book. I go through how the Trump team was able to figure out that Jack Smith's special counsel office, the entire office, was unconstitutional. And this is an amazing story with some genius lawyers. But really the whole nature of Jack Smith's case was rooted in something that it never should have existed. It was all essentially illegal from the start. It was an amazing story how this was figured out. And one of the highlights of the book, I would say, in terms of a reader's perspective, is learning all that stuff. And I will get to it on a later show. But for the purpose of this show, I'm trying to walk you through the extent to which the Biden White House was aware of what was going on. It was no doubt contributing to it. Start from the premise, there's no scenario on earth where Joe Biden and the White House were not well aware that Merrick Garland, his attorney general, had the intention of picking a special counsel to investigate Trump, and to have that specifically be Jack Smith, who was known as someone who pursued very high profile, very aggressive prosecutions. Smith was best known for busting Bob McDonnell, a Republican governor of Virginia, on behalf of the Biden administration, saying that he'd violated a federal bribery statute. Smith got the conviction, but it was overturned a unanimous 8-0 at the Supreme Court, which is a huge embarrassment for Smith. And after that, when Trump rose, Smith left the country. He went to police the international community for the International Criminal Court, which is a kangaroo court out of The Hague, Netherlands. So Smith is a known partisan, staffed up with Obama and Biden lawyers, and was ultimately deemed unconstitutional, but not until after he got to spend 18 months with the appearance of the full force of the federal government behind him to try to wage a political assassination of Donald Trump. Smith also continued to release illicitly obtained information. We know it's illicitly obtained because his office never should have existed, all throughout the election, to the point where it had to be major efforts to try to block the release of some of the files that he was trying to put out there. He was putting out these incredibly broad documents, all to try to create this appearance of sinister corruption and illegality of Donald Trump and his operation. He got to do this for 18 months in the middle of an election, and no one stepped in. At any point, this is a very important point I'm about to make here. At any point, Joe Biden could have stepped in and said, you know what, this doesn't look right. This is not democracy. In democracy, you don't put the full force of the federal government to legally investigate your political rival and to try to get them either kicked off the ballot. I go into that in the book as well. Try to get them jailed, bankrupted. You don't do that in a democracy. We let the voters decide. Biden never did that. He allowed for all of this to continue. Never objected once. Okay, so that's 4 cases because Smith case counts double. Next one, the E. Jean Carroll case. Another one where this would probably be my favorite chapter when I break down the E. Jean Carroll case. This is maybe, I think, the best read in the book. This chapter is, if you're not laughing, then you and I don't share the same sense of humor. The details of her story, I will dwell on this more at a future show. They come off as more farcical by the minute. Each and every detail, you can't believe that it's real. It is truly stranger than fiction if it is real. And note that I will speak very cautiously when addressing her, because she did successfully sue Trump for defamation just by denying some of the claims that she made. But the claims she makes sound in a vacuum as completely insane. And I go through all of them. Trump commented to me that this was one that was always going to be unwinnable for him once the judge and jury were impaneled. He said, if I had F. Lee Bailey in his prime, it wouldn't have mattered. Trump said that to me, specifically at the Oval Office when I talked to him about it. But he's referring to F. Lee Bailey was known for architecting the O.J. Simpson defense and other high-profile cases. But Trump was very keen to address that they were trying to embarrass me before the election. He said this specifically about this case, and he's not wrong. And we know this because of the nature of how the case was started. The case was started by George Conway. Yes, that George Conway, Kellyanne Conway's estranged husband, professional anti-Trump legal pundit, introduced the idea to Carroll of pursuing a civil case against Trump, and the person that funded it was none other than Reid Hoffman, the LinkedIn billionaire who has been one of the biggest topics for me and my research, comes up throughout Breaking the News, comes out throughout Breaking the Law, one of the Democrats who is most involved in funding the left wing, not just the lawfare superstructure, but their entire political apparatus is largely funded by Reid Hoffman. During the time that this entire E. Jean Carroll saga played out, we saw multiple trials and saw Trump assessed tens of millions in fines, a number that I regard as cruel and unusual. The fines assessed to Trump, the damages assessed to Trump, far exceeded even what E. Jean Carroll was asking. And during this time, Reid Hoffman finds himself checking in at the White House over and over and over again. In 2022 alone, he had 5 White House visits. He also was at a meeting with Joe Biden in Silicon Valley. He's a tech guy after all. So he regular connections with the White House. Now, what was Hoffman talking about there? Who was he talking to specifically? What was the extent of the coordination? I don't know. But could you imagine funding a case that could take out Donald Trump that was so high profile, it was all over the news, you're the one who's bankrolling the whole thing, and you're going to the White House and it doesn't come up? Could you picture that scenario? Is that possible? Of course not. Hoffman had this quote about Biden as one of his most ardent defenders. In business and politics, some people reach their greatest achievements in their 80s or even their 90s. Joe Biden has those qualities, even their 90s. This guy loves Joe Biden, funds him, wanted to make sure he won the presidency again, and he did so from partially inside of the White House itself. The last case of the 6, that's the deep dive case that I research in Breaking the Law, I talk about the Letitia James case where she accuses Trump of overvaluating the values of his properties in order to get some benefits for his businesses. James accuses Trump of inflating his assets, and there's a judge in the case, Arthur Engeron, who's another liberal guy, seemed like a pretty mean and weird guy. I go through all of his history in the book as well. Not a lot known about him, but typical Manhattan lib. And again, assessed damages that turned out to be what I regard as cruel and unusual, $450 million in all. And Trump still has a bond up in that case, by the way, which is just unbelievable. So this one has connections not just to the White House, but also to the Senate. Trump himself told me that it is the person he refers to as Chuck Schumer's girlfriend was the one who was actually controlling a lot of this case, a woman named Allison Greenfield. We report on her at Breitbart News, but Trump said that she was the one leading the case against him. And there's a photo of her and Chuck Schumer. I don't personally know how deep her ties were, but she was a major Democrat donor, and it exceeded the amounts that New York State ethic rules allow for someone who is for someone who is involved in cases like this. So as far as I can tell, she's never been held to account, never been disciplined, even though she far exceeded the threshold of what is allowed in terms of donations. So Trump did tell me flat out, he says she was the one who was pulling all the strings and had designs on becoming a federal judge. Again, this ought to be investigated. I don't know the full extent of it. I don't even know exactly what President Trump is basing that claim off of. But she thought that this win was going to catapult her in throughout the rest of her career, and she might have been right. But there are also connections here to the Biden White House itself, because Tish James going to the White House multiple times, allegedly one time to celebrate Ketanji Brown Jackson, another time to meet Kamala Harris, and another event honoring Black women. The media basically dismissed that the Trump trial could have even come up at all during these visits. So you've got the New York Attorney General who campaigned when she ran for office. She ran on the fact that she was going to take out Trump. I start the chapter with this, noting how she said that she is looking forward to going to the office of the Attorney General every day, suing Trump, and then going home. That's what she talked about on the campaign trail. As partisan as you could possibly get, as directed as you could possibly get, trying to take out Trump. And she's at the White House multiple times, and we're expected to believe there was no sort of coordination. It's impossible. It's impossible. And that's why we need the investigation to begin. All of these cases, each and every one, have a deep connection into what is clear election rigging that I believe emanates directly from the Biden White House itself. Who was coordinating it? We don't know anymore, especially considering that it seemed like it was president by committee within the Biden White House. But that is where the investigations must begin, because had the Democrats gotten away with it, this would have been, I believe, the biggest scandal in modern political history. And we cannot afford to ignore the fact that we got away with one here. The fact that Trump was such an incredible candidate, the fact that their cases against him were so weak, the fact that he survived that assassination attempt, we got to have Trump as president. We should feel very relieved and very heartened, but there needs to be justice. There needs to be accountability. The expectation that the Democrats have is that Trump would be in jail. And if not, at a minimum, they were going to make him lose the election because they were forcing him to campaign at a courthouse instead of from the campaign trail. They were assessing him cruel and unusual punishments and fines, convicting him of absurd felonies, all of which I get into the book. All of this was designed to rig the election, and we cannot dismiss this. We cannot move on from this. There's been no justice. It's hard to keep all these cases straight. Now imagine you're Donald Trump, you're running to be the leader of the free world, to take back the presidency, and you're fending off 6 of these at a time. It's amazing. It's a marvel that he got through it, and probably Trump alone is the only one who could have done it. And the Democrats know that. They've built a legal infrastructure, a superstructure that is prepared to do this again the next time. And that is the clear warning I've got in Breaking the Law. That is the opening of the book. This is what is going on. I will tell you, this is a major centerpiece of what I'm trying to accomplish here with the book, and all the details available tomorrow. So I couldn't be more excited about it. All right. Let's talk briefly about a couple other news items while we have here's a Lawfare one. A Biden appointed judge blocking Trump from quickly deporting Biden's parole migrants. This is what I'm saying, guys. They're very organized. This is a brand new story. Judge Gia Cobb, appointed by Biden in the United States District Court for the District of Columbia, ruled on Trump's Department of Homeland Security cannot quickly begin deporting hundreds of thousands of migrants brought to the U.S. by the Biden administration through its parole pipeline. The parole pipeline, as we've discussed on the show, it's a big topic of our research with John Binder. This is really the worst part of our legal immigration system, is people who come to the country and get paroled in and are allowed to stay, put down roots, and to make some sort of broad claims that they're allowed to be here when they don't. They're not going to end up qualifying for asylum in the end, but they get put in line. And even now we're hearing about perhaps amnesties that could kick in after a certain amount of time. This is how you flood the country. And Biden created this pipeline where people would get paroled into it, where they would not have to leave. And this is what these district judges are blocking. Of course, I take all this on in Breaking the Law, but it is ongoing. This Lawfare struggle, this saga has not ended. I do offer solutions. We'll save that for a different show, but I do offer solutions for what we can do about it. But step one is we have to stay vigilant and hyper engaged. All right, let's talk about something fun. Sydney Sweeney stuff continues. I don't know how I was feeling that I didn't get to be a part of the initial Sydney Sweeney news cycle. Those of you who are unfamiliar with her, she's a very popular actress. She's been in all sorts of different shows, particularly HBO shows, Euphoria, The White Lotus, first season, and is also a model and does a lot of brand endorsements. She's the type of person that's very algorithm friendly for Instagram. And she'd done this American Eagle ad last week, which all of you are aware of, where she wears jeans, and it says that Sydney Sweeney is good jeans. That's the point of the ad. And it's a play on words because she's obviously a beautiful woman, blessed physically, but also her jeans are good. It's very simple, kind of classic Americana type ad. But Sydney Sweeney is a blonde. She's got blue eyes. She's quite white. And she's got the traditional female body type that men are attracted to in general and have been for millennia, that we've been told we don't like now. Now we're told we like trannies or whatever, but she's much more of a throwback to traditional female feminine sexuality is part of her appeal. And it's a very interesting thing because the woke left has gone so crazy that they have now made it MAGA or MAGA. Do we prefer MAGA? We've now made it MAGA to be able to, I guess, objectify female beauty. And I'm not anti-objectification. You can't only objectify. Like if you got a wife, you can't only objectify a wife. But I think generally people like to be appreciated for their attractiveness. And Sydney Sweeney is really leaning into that with her brand. She's someone who sells sexuality. She's got a very large chest, for lack of a better expression, and she flaunts it and uses it to her advantage for her career, and it delights and entertains millions of people. I mean, she's steering into it. That's what she does, and it's highly effective in terms of her getting attention for herself. And she's also got this sort of classic American look, which is really interesting to me, and I find this to be very compelling. And it's not just a white thing. She's also got this look, which I think is very appealing in terms of there's a realness to it that you don't always see in a lot of female stars. There is, let me give you some examples, and this is not skin color related, but none of us know anyone who looks like Beyonce or Rihanna. Very exotic looks and beautiful, but not something that's relatable at all. Same thing I think goes for the Hadid sisters, the supermodels. I think they're white. I don't know, Middle Eastern maybe, but the certainly cafe au lait-ish. And they don't look like people you'd ever see on the street. You don't know anyone in your high school who's got that appeal. And then likewise, blonde, blue-eyed pop star Sabrina Carpenter, another one who's very popular, very algorithm friendly pop star online, got hit songs. She's got this sort of canned plastic look that was concocted by some sort of a corporation, and that's very clear. But Sydney Sweeney's got that look in her eye, which I think makes it feel like maybe you knew someone like that in high school. Probably didn't have the same cup size, but maybe you've seen someone like that before. There's something very relatable to it, very Americana to it, and so it's not a surprise that she's everywhere and she's become popular. But the reaction to this ad is way over the top, suggesting that the good genes comment was really some sort of a Nazi Aryan thing, that her genes are based off of her whiteness and her blue eyes, not that she clearly was born blessed with a terrific body. Like that's what it's about. And anyone who felt that way is clearly a joyless scold. And this is my point. I make this with Nolte all the time. The left is a sexless streak where they seem to resent sexuality, at least in the traditional sense. And that's kind of unbelievable because when I was growing up, conservatives were the prudish ones. We were the ones who were afraid of sexuality and traditional gender roles in the sense of sexual attraction. And we were trying to avoid the subject and not steer into that. And that's really changed over the last 20 years. I think, and this has been all this territory ceded to us that we now get to just have beautiful, curvaceous women just are de facto MAGA, I guess, as of now. So that sounds great. Fine, we'll take it. And you guys can keep all the Lizzos of the world and they can be your symbols. So this is at the moment, I can't help but make this point. It feels obvious, but I can't help but make it. This is at the moment where the Democrats are trying to find a way to connect with younger males. And they're concerned that they're losing the younger man vote. And in the meantime, you're trying to make it some sort of a right-wing thing to be a hot girl in blue jeans. So it's a thank you, Democrats, for being so stupid. I don't even know if I fully accept that there was a huge freak out online. I saw some TikTok stuff that was going on, but I don't know. I think we effectively blew this up on the right and claimed her for our own. But now Trump is taking it to the next level, and this is really the fresh stuff that I wanted to bring to your attention today. Check out this truth bomb from Trump. Sydney Sweeney, a registered Republican, this was leaked. I don't know if it's true or not, but it was leaked that she is, has the hottest ad out there. It's for American Eagle, and the jeans are flying off the shelves. Go get him, Sydney. Yeah, the reports are that American Eagle stock is way up. I didn't check it before the show. I'm sure it is. It's getting all this great attention. On the other side of the ledger, Jaguar did a stupid and seriously woke advertisement that is a total disaster. Jaguar did the United Colors of Benetton thing where it was all the different colors and all rainbow flag and no one actually sexually attractive. It was just all woke nonsense and garbage, which all repels normal people. And it really hurt their company. Their CEO just resigned in disgrace, and the company is in absolute turmoil. Who wants to buy a Jaguar after looking at that disgraceful ad? Shouldn't they have learned a lesson from Bud Light, which went woke and essentially destroyed in a short campaign the company? That's a great point. The market cap destruction has been unprecedented. The billions of dollars so foolishly lost. Or just look at woke singer Taylor Swift. Ever since I alerted the world as to what she was saying on Truth, that I can't stand her, parentheses, hate, exclamation point, she was booed out of the Super Bowl and became no longer hot. The tide is seriously turned. Being woke is for losers. Being Republican is what you want. And the last little half sentence is cut off here on my screen. But he's so right on this. He's pouncing on the historic opportunity. We will have the fun, smiley, great-looking blondes with big cans. We will take them. And if it means you're a right winger, if you like them, fine. Come join us in the normal side of the world, and we can live in that world. We can live in that world. And thank you, Donald Trump, for claiming it. It'd be interesting to see what happens to Sydney Sweeney if she has to do some sort of a groveling speech or something, or an apology, or distance herself. The reports are that she's got a very right-wing family. She's never said anything politically. And I think that's smart of her, because if I was managing her, I would recommend her steer clear of any direct politics for a while. But by her saying nothing, I think it conveys very clearly where she probably stands politically, and certainly what her upbringing was like. So everything we know about her past is that she had right-wing family members. So I assume that's where she's at politically. I hope she just doesn't say anything, and I really hope she doesn't cave to the woke mob, because that will never satisfy them. Apologies never work. And if she does choose to avoid the apology, she will even go up in the eyes of the MAGA crowd. So she's best off basking in the spotlight, enjoying the adulation, and doing whatever is next for her in her career, which is just beyond belief exciting, I'm sure. So she's everywhere, and good. We'll take her. Thank you, President Trump, for claiming her. I will mention, President Trump sat down with Matt Boyle last week at Breitbart. Matt previewed it here on this show, but I haven't had a chance to catch up with him on it on any of my various platforms. But I did get a clip of Trump that I had to play from the interview that I wanted to share with you. Check this out.
Despite all of these successes, right, that we're talking about here, first off, we're only 6 months into the second term of yours. You see people out there trying to divide your great base, right? Like you see it in the establishment media. The Democrats are always trying to do it. You saw it on Iran. You see it on trade. You see it on immigration.
You see it all over.
Yeah, all the time. I see this phrase out there. I think you developed this word, panicins, right? Like no panicins. Can you define panicins for us? What is a panikin, and why should we not follow that?
Well, in some cases, they're good people that really have the best, and they want to do things. But I call them panicins because maybe they're not smart, because they're playing right into the enemy's camp. And in other cases, they really are people that panic. They can't handle pressure.
See, this is such an amazing point, and I love the panicins branding, but it really comes down to a lot that people are not able to handle the pressure, and I think that is a big A big point. A big point is that people being unable to handle pressure is what causes them to panic and freak out. Is that sometimes things have consequences and you have to be able to live with those consequences, and that most of your ideas don't end up perfect. And Trump is very accustomed to dealing with this. And I feel like a lot of people that would prefer the world to be in a black and white space, and it's just very unrealistic. And you see people online acting as though there's a clear-cut answer to complex problems, nuance dying, and Trump doesn't want anything to do with that. He's going to make moves. You can take him, if you take him literally, it's at your own peril. You're going to get burned. And I think that's what he's responding to. And there really is a lot of life lessons in this.
You know, both are sort of dangerous. But no, we've done an unbelievable job. I mean, it's being recognized. One of the things that's nice about, like, when we solved the situation with Cambodia, you know, that unbelievable situation that was going on there was, and we're dealing, so I'm dealing with both countries. And when I get it solved, it's so nice. It makes me feel so good. And we're saving millions of lives potentially, right? Just millions of lives when you stop India and Pakistan from fighting. And you have people that don't even like that. You have people that want us to stay in our own shell and don't solve a war. You know, a nuclear war like that could very easily bleed into our country. And I'll tell you what, the nuclear dust will come into our country, and that's not exactly healthy or good. But if I can do these, and I do them relatively easy, you know, I know people, I respect people, they respect me, and as the leader of this country, I'm able to solve. So we've done six wars, 12 countries. Some of them actually involved a couple of countries on each side, and it's a great honor.
So, and he wants to get back on the agenda. He wants to go back to talking about the victories he's getting, and he's racking them up at a very quick rate. And I feel like that he likes controlling the narrative in this way. And this is my recommendation to all MAGA heirs, all of Trump's successors, is that you have to have the ability to be able to control the narrative, control the media. And he doesn't want to talk about people panicking all the time. He wants to talk about all the big stuff he's doing, cutting deals, resetting global trade, making sure that we have a net decrease in immigration, I think is the stat. I've got this clip. Check this out from CNN's Harry Enton. Check this out.
The other big thing that Trump ran on, right, was immigration. How about net migration into the United States? Get this. It's down. It's going to be down at least 60%. We may be dealing with, get this, negative net migration to the United States in 2025. That would be the first time there is negative net migration in this country in at least 50 years. We're talking about down from 2.8 million in 2024.
That is a really, really amazing stat. And it just shows you how we spend so little time on that, and we spend so much time on little nuanced things where people are so often wrong. I think back at the Iran bombing as a clear example, where one that it was almost sort of painful for me to watch that saga go down, because I know how Trump thinks through these things. He put down a red line. You cannot develop nuclear. They would not stop. So he was going to go in. The belly was already softened by Israel's targeted attacks for the previous week or two. He was going to go in, surprise attack, get in there, bomb the nuclear facilities, and leave. He was not going to start a ground war. He's not going to start World War III. Everything went exactly according to Trump's playbook. And look, I'll be self-aggrandizing. It was exactly how I expected it to go, but it was also only based off of me watching his patterns. And yet there's so much hand-wringing online, so much debate online. There's nothing to debate. He nailed it. And everyone who freaked out was wrong. And it's very hard for him to see that some of his his biggest supporters to get caught up in stuff that's just essentially a waste of time. So very cool. Great stats on the immigration as well. So I'm glad to work that in. All right. Other stuff that's out there, not as happy, that I wanted to put on your radar. We won't get to do a full breakdown of all this stuff, but a lot of discussion about what's going on in Gaza. Over the weekend, we saw video of starving people in Gaza. Israeli hostages is what we saw, who were being forced to dig their own graves. And Gaza put out, the Hamas put out these videos And the goal is to pressure the Israeli government to make concessions to the terrorist group, but basically saying that we're going to keep torturing your people, your hostages, if you don't make concessions. And it's just sick and perverted, and they should get nothing for it. And so now the discussion of Netanyahu is to try to finish off the war and to try to go in there and to perhaps fully occupy the Gaza Strip. So he wants those hostages back, and that is the type of threat that really is going to test Netanyahu's mettle. And maybe there's a war that should have been finished off a while ago, but a big drama there, and we'll keep an eye on it. I know that this has gotten Trump, I think, wound up. He announced earlier today that he is going to withhold funds, FEMA disaster funds, from cities and states that are boycotting Israel. The BDS movement is a movement that wants to cut Israel off from money. It wants to destroy Israel. So I'm probably more sympathetic to this than some of your favorite colleagues on X, the Everything app, some of your favorite follows, because I feel like the BDS stuff is not, I have very little tolerance for it. You're allowed to have free speech and thought, but the goal is to try to destroy Israel. That's what it's about. And if Trump wants to wield the disaster relief funds as a weapon, the same way Biden had wielded disaster relief funds against his political weapons, I can live with it. It's something I can live with. And what people have missed with the initial reports on this is that the policy also withholds funding from those who discriminate against white people and those that are sanctuaries for illegal aliens. So he's just trying to wield the power that he has to try to get some results. So a very fluid developing situation, a lot more at Breitbart tomorrow, but horrible stuff continues to come out of Gaza, and one that we want to see this end because the Panicans are really tricky on this issue. So we want to get this thing done. All right. And then the last one, and we will spend more time on this, I want to bring up a lot of debate brewing over Texas House going to redistrict. They're doing a not post-census, but a mid-decade redistricting. A lot of this was something that Trump wanted. And the design is to draw up 5 new conservative seats through gerrymandering. And this is another tricky one because in a vacuum, there's a lot not to like about this idea. But if you want to play ruthless political politics, that's a thing. The way the Democrats always have, it's also sort of a no-brainer because Governor Abbott probably can pull this off. There'll, of course, be court challenges, so we'll see what that's like. But the Democrats have done this all over the country in the past. They did in California. They drew up new Democrat seats in California. The Democrats in Texas were ironically fleeing, so they didn't have to vote on it, to Illinois, which is wildly gerrymandered, absurdly so. So this is the issue with it. It is a slippery slope because you can play this game and the Democrats get power, they can gerrymander. But the mechanics of this are interesting because if you're someone who just wants to rack up the wins, this seems like it could be a pretty quick win for Republicans, but also it does set a precedent. Really, it continues a precedent the Democrats set that we're just drawing up seats based off of who's in power, nakedly political. So more detail on that at Breitbart.com, and I will get you some more later in the shows this week. But that'll be it for today. Breaking the Law is out now. Thanks to all of you for getting behind the book. Tell 10,000 friends and family members about it. We want to get this thing moving and shaking so that hopefully these investigations can take place and some accountability can finally occur. There's been no justice for Donald Trump, and that can start right now if we get the word out about this book, Breaking the Law. Thank you for everything, and leaving 5-star reviews. All that's good as well. All right, thanks to Misty. Thanks to all of you in the audience. Talk to you next time.